Also, we were at the KDE Graz Mega Sprint 2026 in Graz, Austria. We are going to have a panel with some conclusions of what was discussed, what is going to be implemented in the next weeks or months, and broad ideas about the future of the KDE community, KDE Plasma, the KDE applications. Please.
I was expecting a question.
A question.
Oh no. So a question. So what was the discussions that you were most interested
How about we start by introducing ourselves?
Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Okay. I'm going. I'm Marco Martin. Don't laugh, please. No, I've been working on KDE since 19 years, I think, at this point. Mainly on Plasma, our desktop offering, and Kirigami, a toolkit for doing applications. And yeah, during this sprint, I looked after mostly about topics about either Kirigami or something those about things in the Plasma session as a whole.
I'm Kristen. I've been working with KDE for several years, and for a little over a year employed directly by the EV to work on Plasma. And my focus is a little bit of everywhere, but has been mostly for the past year or so on Plasma setup and Plasma keyboard. And at the sprint was kind of those things, but also everywhere, the way I tend to do, jumping between the testing and the UI and the UX and the whatever pops up that's interesting that I can't help inserting myself into because I have an opinion and I want to help.
Yeah, we love opinions.
We love having opinions.
Oh, yes.
Cool. And my name is Alex. I am from Barcelona. I am the KDE president, KDE being the organization around KDE, but I've also been software developer within KDE for a fairly long time, and I've been doing all sorts of things in Plasma and whatnot. So regarding the sprint, which is what you were originally asking, I guess we kind of started organizing the sprint around the KDE goals being the big top level items within the KDE community. Can we think of the three?
We care about your input.
Yes. We have the onboarding.
Developer experience, streamlined developer experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is like we had Nico here talking yesterday about the
What was the
findings and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. And we had some other topics around that as well. And we also had the one regarding the onboarding of new developers through the university agreements and stuff that Paul was leading.
Yeah, that's also how easy to get in our platform and starting developing software that can always be easier than is now. We went quite a long way, but there is still stuff to do.
Yeah. That was one thing I was passionate about when I started. I had some difficulties that I tried to smooth out for people coming after me.
Yeah, it's very important. Like when you start, you like all of this knowledge about the knowledge that is lacking.
Yeah,
it's
once you
important.
get in, you lose that context, and it's really hard to see it again.
Exactly. Yes.
And I know that not a lot of people have the same bullheadedness to just keep going despite these challenges that I do. And I wanted to make sure that someone that might give up wouldn't face quite as much challenge getting started.
And also easy for hard for me to really get in that mindset is that also the things that I had to do when I started are quite different from the things that now one has to start, because at the time it was on SVN, it was a completely different project structure, different sub-projects that were cataloged in a different way, different dependencies, and completely different ecosystem back then. So now I'm so much into it that one has proximity blindness. I don't even know the things that new people have to learn to really get into the development.
Yeah, it can be hard to do that, and I try to maintain that mindset of the person coming to things brand new, which is why I advocate for things like documentation and comments and stuff for someone who's not familiar.
Yeah, unfortunately, those are always the less exciting thing to do, but it's conversely the most important.
Also for yourself 2 years down the road and you come back to something and go, what was this again?
Yeah. Also, the story is changing a lot, right? Like from when we started decades back or years back, right? Like for example, now we have on the equation KDE Linux. KDE Linux has also been a big topic in the sprint, considering that Harold
and will probably be a big help in the future for having something that where like setting up everything is a common way. I also wonder if Flatpak is going to help there to go from either hacking on an application and developing while building Flatpaks or developing a new application, pressing a button somewhere and a wild Flatpak appears.
Yeah, it's something that we've been exploring little by little. And actually, one of the problems with Flatpak specifically is that I guess those of us who come from the era before, like we're so used into the ways of like before that it becomes a little bit harder into embracing these new technologies that are like super central in your development flow.
I have to change things that I'm doing them the same way since 20 years, and then now it's different, and also for it's something that it becomes not only onboarding of new people, but also make it easy as a transition for all people. For instance, I still can't really get myself to do my normal KDE development on KDE Linux. I think KDE Linux in the future will ensure that the development story will be much easier, much cleaner. But for now, it's so much different from just the normal Linux system that you hammer it until it can build the things that you need. That we really need to also up our game on that regard, so that me, old fart, old developer, can take KDE Linux and say, yeah, it's much easier to do my stuff in there rather than making installing the global user thing like a caveman.
It's interesting. I think KDE Linux even now is probably more approachable for someone new because they don't have those things they're used to that they want to do that are not necessarily super easy right now.
Yes.
And it's easier with KDE Linux than it is with some other distro. You don't have to figure out all of the dependencies that you need and the tooling and everything, because most of that stuff is just included and you just need to build and edit and go on your way.
I think that in this regard it's about like you need to change your ways, right? And like that's harder, so much harder than learning a new thing and starting to use it, because when you learn something, it's there, you use it, that's all fine, right? But like wanting to reach out for that thing you used to have and like not finding it and having to go through the mental process of, oh yeah, we're in a different world right now. I think that this is at a very human level a harder thing, but I think that we're going in the right direction and we've learned a lot from mistakes in the past. It's not our first radio, the KDE Linux thing, and I think that it shows, and we're all quite hopeful that it's gonna bring a lot of good news for the community at large that are very much needed, right? Like there's been a lot of distance between developers and users in
Yeah.
our community, where like it didn't need to be like that, right? Like open source, we do have the advantage of having this proximity given the internet that it's not really necessary. Like there's not like really big shells of like organizations and stuff that will keep that distance, but we've had that through other means that we created on the way. And if we can address that, I think that there's a good opportunity that, well, we can meet the users where they are,
Yeah.
which has also been a problem, right? And probably alienated some people in the past, and let's see if we can bring these people back on
Yeah,
board.
and again, difficult for the onboarding because you just have to build from master these 500 packages if you want to develop. How hard can it be, right?
Yeah. And it can take a while if you don't have a super powerful computer, but you want to get into it and you have to build that whole stack. That can be a lot, especially if, there's something doesn't quite work and has to be fixed, and then repeat for a couple dozen packages. If you don't have to deal with all of that, you only have to deal with one on KDE Linux, that's definitely a lower barrier to entry.
Yep.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about the onboarding, but in this sprint for Artifacts of Life, most of the Plasma team were here.
Yeah.
Is it actually really a Plasma sprint, like by name?
Also, I don't think being by name a Plasma Sprint or something else sprint has any use. It's a sprint about the KDE pieces that matter. That a part of our experience is the Plasma session. A part of our experience is the applications, the application story. That also we need to get much better because indeed is also for the onboarding part is much easier starting to do some work on one application because it's a simpler thing. It's one repo with some dependencies compared to like the whole 500 repos that you need to build for really developing in the Plasma session. For instance, we had several discussions, at least for the part that it's really near to the thing that I work on, several discussions on the Kirigami story, which is a series of frameworks that we use to do applications with QML. That is the new way in Qt to do GUI apps. So we are improving that as well to make that those KDE applications done in QML and Kirigami are so nice that people want to make them, and people that think I want to make a new very cool application. What tools I will use to build that new cool application, and look at the libraries, the frameworks, and the thing that we offer, and say those are really cool. I want to use that because it's cool and because it's easy to do, because it's much powerful of what those tools give me. So yeah, I think the application development is a big part both on our user story, that people get to experience our software both in a Plasma session and on other environments, on other operating systems, and both as a way to get also new developers that find the tools that we have to building applications to be very good.
So that's a good point, right? Like we had many Plasma people, we had many apps people here.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, well, from A to B, so to speak. There was a lot of discussions around Wayland topics. Wayland has been a big difference since the last few years, how we develop things, right?
Yeah, it's also luckily it's also became slightly more boring than it was used to be. And with boring I mean nowadays it mostly just kind of works. There are still things to be ironed out and there are still things to improve, but running everything in a Wayland session now it's the norm and now it just works and I'm very happy about that. So now we will get to kill X11 the X11 session.
Ooh, controversial.
The controversial part, yeah.
So how has it been for you to start working with Wayland components? Like you just more or less started on that front, right?
Yeah, I hadn't touched the lower level Wayland stuff like that before, and it's different. And working with the lower level Wayland stuff is, I'm going to say, not super easy. It can be satisfying because it's really interesting and complex challenges that you don't face in a lot of other places. And you can do some really cool and powerful things. And for me, I find it interesting to work on the low-level parts of the operating system like that and changing the way things are displayed and interact and stuff like that. I kind of wish that it was a little easier because it could be a little less friction.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting.
You have something specific in mind. Maybe you want to like give good examples so that whoever
A
is
particular
watching.
problem
When someone is coming in and wanting to work with the Wayland protocols, or maybe even think about changing them, contributing, commenting on a merge request, contributing code, something like that, it can be kind of difficult because I'm going to say the biggest thing is that a lot of it lacks documentation and just kind of assumes knowledge, and you'll look through a page for one of the protocols and it'll reference another protocol without actually saying it's referencing another protocol, and then you just have this weird term that you have to look up and it's repeated nowhere else on the page, and you search through and don't find it anywhere else, and then you go to like the source repository and you find a mention of it there, and that spot doesn't actually give you a high-level description of what it is. So now you have to figure out what that is, and that's fairly common through most of the protocol stuff I've looked at, which makes it not very approachable. You got to kind of piece together just like the high-level concepts yourself, and that's the kind of thing that would make it a lot easier for a newcomer to come in and understand and talk about it and contribute.
Need documentation,
Yeah.
better documentation for sure. Do you find this lack most on the actual common Wayland part, or also on our part, like how to bind to Qt a new protocol or things like that? Both, right?
I'm gonna say I found the Wayland part more difficult, but that's probably because I have more familiarity with the KDE stuff. I have like an intuitive sense now of where to go to find this stuff in the KDE stack. If I find something that's completely unknown to me, I already have an idea of how to figure that out. But when I come into the Wayland thing and I don't know any of the terms and I don't know the repos and any of this stuff, I just see this method with a strange name that isn't super descriptive and no description, and then a couple of arguments that again have no description and no link to find a description, or even the code implementation that I could look at for it. And I'm just like, I don't know what your protocol does. I don't know how to use it, and I don't know how to figure it out. That's challenging.
Maybe you always need to
Paradoxically,
have a Git clone of the Wayland protocols and of the
That's a way
reference
to do
implementation,
Yeah,
such that you can see the
But-
body behind the methods.
it. That's
In
my
a-
argument would be that it shouldn't have to do that.
in a neither
That
order.
the actual list of the protocols should have all of the methods and arguments and things documented. The enums should have documentation, like even if it's just a really simple short
Yeah.
one, and clicking on the thing links you to the source code.
For what it's worth, I would say that Wayland does that quite well. In that, like most Wayland protocols, what they are, it's an XML file with documentation, right? The fact that it's not documented should be an artifact in that, I mean, maybe somebody forgot or it's like a super shady one, but if anything, something that they definitely kept in mind was the documentation of the protocols. How to reach for the things or whether the documentation is as good as it could be, that's definitely also up for debate. But
my view is also kind of limited because I haven't looked through all of the Wayland stuff. Maybe the other protocols are better in this regard, but the few that I've been working with were
meaning the input method or
the input method and
Input method is one that is for sure had a quite interesting story.
yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah,
for sure.
Sometimes paradoxically, one of the things that clarify mostly is to go dig in the very long discussions that happened before they were merged, that sometimes they can be really discouraging. Sometimes they actually force the author to really explain what the protocol does and why it was needed. So that could be also useful.
In the merge requests for the Wayland protocols, there's enormous tribal knowledge in here. For instance, you can immediately see that there's maybe 4 people that know the protocols inside and out, and not only the protocols but also the spirit of the protocols. And you get at some point a merge request presented, and then maintainer A says, hey, maintainer B, can you please also look at these things? So it's his knowledge is not enough, and he immediately requires opinion of his co-maintainers, because again, everything needs to correspond to their experience that they had in the last 15 years for maintaining the various extensions, etc. Okay, anything else about the gaming devices, remapping, tablet gestures?
A lot about gestures and hardware remapping and things like that, and came up with a lot of good ideas, and we discussed the actual UX of it quite extensively, trying to make a good user story for how this will work, because it's an ambitious project to have very configurable gestures and bindings.
Yeah, and we have most of the building blocks already. We have all the gesture infrastructure in Quinn. We're starting to have the input remapper for gamepads also in Quinn. We will going to have a good UI to configure all of that. That is still in the works, and yeah, during this meeting also was a bit fleshed out the architecture that the compositor then talks with the configurator and how the configuration is managed and whatnot. So now shouldn't be that far off in the future that it becomes very easy. But to configure gesture, like what does a swipe up with 4 fingers on the touchpad do, or I am on an application that does not support a touchpad, so I want the left arrow in the pad to actually be a left keyboard arrow in this application and not in this other application. We are going to have all of that.
It's going to be very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, with this we're going to wrap. Thank you everybody. The Mega Sprint in Graz 2026 was really important.
Has been a blast.
Thank you to all of the people that donated to the KDE community. Parts of your donations were used to host and make sure this Mega Sprint was as successful as possible. Thank you.
Bye.